Okay, so hi everyone, and warm welcome to everyone. I'm Judith. I think everyone knows me by now, but if not, then I'm in charge of product marketing at NIAX. Hello. And just a small introduction before we jump in. This is our first webinar for 2021. We're covering PSD2 regulations, and we want to get a better understanding of NIAX's general approach in this arena. Our two presenters for today are Erez, who's heading the payment solutions. And yeah, that's Erez. And of course, Oded, our lovely CCO. Erez will cover the general overview of the PSD2 regulations, challenges faced, and more long-term, short-term approaches. And then Oded will take over and he'll walk us through some of the technical configurations at the back end and more insights on the actual implementation. So like Eliran mentioned, we'd love to hear from you at the end if time permits. So let's see how this goes, and we'll have or we'll take an open panel discussion, or we'll have answers sent in and then we can revert back via email. And of course, there's a recorded version of this. Everyone will have access. So let's jump right in. Erez, it's all yours.
Okay, so I'm going to start by saying that, first of all, in case it was not clear from the agenda, we're going to discuss a certain segment of a regulation that is relevant mostly to our customers and distributors in Europe. So from those of you who come out of this region, could be a good it could be a good opportunity to learn something interesting. But other than that, if this is not something that refers to you, then feel free to communicate us offline and use your time for something else. But in general, we're going to discuss the European regulation today, and which is named PSD2, and its implication on the NIAX product and the NIAX solution. So first of all, a quick introduction from my side. My name is Erez Aminpour. I've been in NIAX for 1 year and 4 months. I'm leading the payment solutions team, which is in charge mainly of the payment integration and acquiring integrations of NIAX. I highly apologize for I have the camera on one side and the screen on another. So if it looks like I'm not addressing you directly, then sincere apologies on that. So without any further ado, let's start digging in. I'm going to discuss more the introduction, telling you basically, for those of you who are not aware of what PSD2 is. I'm going to introduce it to you, from a more of a formal side, and what is the effect on you that you should be feeling or should be aware of and vigilant of as well. Okay, so assuming that you see my presentation now, then what are we going to do is basically I'm going to go over, first of all, introduce you to PSD2, as I mentioned before. Then we're going to discuss the exemption, which are an important part of our reaction plan to this regulation. And then we're going to discuss basically what are the best approaches and what are we preparing for when this comes to realization. Oded will detail further on the NIAX subscription program, which is one of our go-tos in terms of improving our acceptance rate, and he will discuss, the more technical details of how to get it done. Okay, so what is PSD2 in these terms? PSD2 is a very wide regulation in Europe. It basically revolves around a lot of aspects in the payment industry. Some of them are relating to information that you have to keep. Other relates to the information that you are obligated as a banking services to provide. And other basically refers to your obligation as a payment acceptor or a card acceptor to perform a strong customer authentication on all electronic payments. So this is the main mandate and the main issue from PSD2 that applies directly to us as payment providers and card acceptance providers. And basically, this when you refer to strong customer authentication, when you say customer, you mean in our case card holders, meaning we need to be able to authenticate the person who is presenting the card. A few exemptions do apply, but the main strong customer authentication that are in use are mainly password that you might encounter on e-commerce transactions that are less of our domain, but you have possibly felt it, and we will discuss this option as well. And the PIN code. The PIN code is the one that you are possibly more familiar with from your ecosystem, from the retail ecosystem, from actual PIN pads that support PIN, and this allows you to basically validate in one of the cases. A second way of this is basically revolves around something you know. I mean, password or PIN code is something you know, and other means of authentication is something you are. In this case, you are aware of fingerprint recognition or face recognition, neither of which are currently in place in the payment industry as a whole, but there are a few pilots going on these aspects, but nothing that could be, widely deployed at the moment. So basically, when approaching strong customer authentication, we are basically talking about the use of either a password or a PIN code. However, exemption to strong customer authentications do apply. So we have to understand these exemptions to understand what are we going to do as distributors or someone who is using a product, an unattended product that is currently does not support PIN. So first of all, contactless payments and at the point of sale are exempt, meaning that the SEA is would not be required under a certain amount and under the cumulative amount of consecutive transaction or the number of consecutive contactless transactions. To put that in a simple case, if I did 5 transactions in a row with a contactless interface without performing any strong customer authentication, meaning I did not enter any PIN, and this is from the perspective of the card holder. I mean, if a certain card did not perform 5 transactions in a row without pressing PIN, then this rule, basically the third rule, will not apply. If the cumulative amount of those transactions did not exceed 150 euros, then again, this clause will not apply. And if the certain amount that I'm currently trying to make a transaction with is under 50 euros, which is basically our case in the micropayments industry, then the contactless transaction is exempt. Looking at it from a wider perspective, this basically means that, on 10% of all contactless transactions, we might face something that resembles to a PSD2 related decline on contactless. But other than that, and assuming that all issuers really impose these rules, the acceptance rate should be relatively high for contactless. Other exemptions apply to certain industries, such as public transportation and parking. Those are applied by the MCC that you define for a certain billing provider or a certain actor. Those of you in the parking or in the public transportation area are completely exempt from PSD2 in general, from SCA in those devices. Another issue, when referring to remote transactions, PSD2 is basically referring to e-commerce transactions, the ones that you are doing remotely from the merchant by yourself. And the same rules apply as in contactless, but the amounts are different. The amount has to be under 30 euros, and the cumulative amount cannot exceed 100 euros. But all in all, this applies to generally for e-commerce transactions. Other exemptions may also apply when you're using a transaction risk analysis based approach. In this approach, well, you as a merchant are basically asking the issuer to exempt the SCA mandate. It has some sort of imposed type of action that you have to perform and a certain type of rules that you have to meet. The amount cannot exceed, the amount of the transaction cannot exceed 500 euros, which in our case is pretty much every transaction, and that there is a certain risk analysis undertaken in specific requirements by the issuer. And basically, that means that if we, as a merchant, send an exemption request to the acquirer and ask him to basically waiver some part of the exemption from various reasons and just ones as well in our case, meaning that our business is relatively low risk because it's micropayment and the chargeback rate is relatively low. And the fraud rates again are relatively low. This is a term that is used by risk takers for acquirers. So these are basically the main exemptions that are currently being in use, and I think we will talk a little bit later how are we going to use those exemptions to help us increase our approval rate as well. So let's discuss our approach to how to be vigilant and be more ready to accept the PSD2 imposement in most of Europe. So let's discuss first contactless. So contactless, in this time, we see a constant migration from contact to contactless through all the regions in Europe. With contactless becoming more and more present. I can say that in Europe, 64% of all our credit card transactions are performed in contactless, which is a lot. This also, I think, gives us a good indication of what our cardholders and our more direct customers are capable of and are expecting of us. We see that contactless is already being adopted as the default kind of payment. Surely, when you pay for a low amount, minimal amount transaction, such as vending or other micropayment industries. The second thing that we have to take into account is that our contactless acceptance rate are currently around 95%. That means that even though we expect a slight decrease, if all European issuers indeed decide to adopt and apply this regulation, we're going to see a slight decrease. But all in all, we're going to have very good acceptance rate from contactless. Also, contactless-based mobile transactions, which account for, I think, I will see later, but I think it's 23% of all mobile transactions. We're referring to Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, all other local bank apps that utilize contactless payments as or the NFC payments in terms of payment method. are basically outside the scope of PSD2 because they are using cardholder device cardholder verification method, which is CDCVM. For example, when you are paying with Apple Pay, those of you who had this experience know that you are usually required to unlock your phone either with a fingerprint or a face recognition or some sort of identification. In other payment apps, you might be able to unlock your phone or enter a certain passcode before you pay. And this is basically counts as a valid strong customer authentication under the PSD2. So usage of Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, and everything that works in the same manner, NFC and HCE related apps should be well okay, and we should not receive any sort of decline in terms of PSD2. So the main problem that we're basically trying to tackle is that PSD2 mandates PIN usage for all contact transaction, contact EMV, meaning that you insert your chip into the device. And in our case, Nayax devices simply do not support PIN. We also don't believe that they should support PIN in this case because that would possibly make the worst user experience and would also make our devices more expensive and more and less likely to be used. So let's see what we will discuss. How are we going to mitigate this problem a little bit further on? In addition, as you might be aware, Nayax supports a wide variety of alternative payment methods throughout Europe. Alternative payments, I usually mean payment applications, usually QR-based, that are not utilizing NFC or a banking app of any sort. These are usually schemes that bypass the credit card scheme. Examples such as Swish in Sweden, Point, Blue Code in Central Europe, LifePay in France, Vips in Norway, and more. I mean, we still have a lot of those coming. So this is time to basically be aware of the local payments or the local payment apps. I'm sure you're well aware of something going on in your region. That you think that integration with it could help you increase your acceptance rate and basically try to revert people there. If you don't have any integration active in your area, then this is where we come in at Nayax headquarters. Then you can basically raise the issue to your account manager, and we will see if we can start any sort of integration, or maybe we can provide an API to help the third party integrate with us as well. This is also an option. And the reason why these payment applications are also a good alternative to card acceptance is because they are as well under the PSD2 SCA requirement. They fall under it because in most of them you have to identify yourself or unlock your phone or enter some sort of identification to the mobile device before you pay, and so these also count as strong customer authentication. To give you a glimpse, we discussed earlier about the rate of usage. So let's look at the big picture here. You can see that 64% are regular contactless transactions in Europe today. I'm talking about Nayax in general. Another 23% is NFC mobile payments, the ones we discussed, usually Apple Pay, Google Pay, and alike. And contact transactions stand for the remaining 13%. Of course, this is not uniform across all regions. We see that certain regions that you can see in this side of the map are still very high use of contact transactions. We are aware that in certain regions, contactless has not been issued in full for all credit card brands and all banks. This is also a mandate by Visa and MasterCard that was imposed, I think, about a year ago, and has been prolonged in certain regions where the banks simply didn't make it in time to issue enough contactless cards. However, the general move is to move from contact to contactless, and basically I think that in about 2 years the entire European market should be fully migrated to contactless. The other issue that might be causing the preference for contact transaction in certain regions is simply the way that people are used to do things. I mean that in that term, people got very well educated with contact payment, and they are, instinctively pulling out their card and inserting the card in because this is what they're used to. They're still not used to contactless. So this is also something that we're going to try to approach. So our approach to the solution will basically be based on a long-term approach and more of a short-term approach that we're going to discuss shortly. But in the long term, as I mentioned, firstly, we don't believe that strong customer authentication for a €1 transaction is a business requirement. And we're going to tackle this in a few ways. First of all, we are already in a process of requesting an exemption for this with the help of MasterCard and Visa. We possibly believe that this is some sort of a mistake, from the regulator's point of view, not taking our industry, the micropayment industry, into account. And the second of all is definitely working together with the EVA more closely when they are about to define PSD2 regulations. This is something that will take time, talking about at least a year or so, but this is our way to tackle this impose in the long term. In the more short term, first of all, some of you are familiar with Monex. So Monex is one way that we intend to secure e-commerce payments. And when it comes to e-commerce, PSD2 has only one solution, which is 3D Secure. I'm not sure if you are familiar with the term 3D Secure, but I'm possibly sure that most of you had an experience of shopping online and being redirected to your bank's site in order to get identified by one mean or another. This is usually when you're buying in a big amount, or booking a flight, or an hotel, or something that might cost a lot of money. So you're usually redirected to your bank's site. And Monex, as I can say, that is now already in a pilot phase in production, implementing 3D Secure version 2, which is under the scope of the SCA regulation as well. This will apply to the first time when a card is being onboarded to Monex, basically, when a credit card is being onboarded to Monex. So only for the first time, the user will be required to go through a 3D Secure process. And for the other times when he likes to top up his prepaid card, then there should be no other friction resulting to that. This basically makes Monex SDA compliant app, and like all the other apps that we mentioned earlier, and it should have no problems in meeting the regulation on this term. So we discussed the customer experience in terms of people being used to contact and not understanding why are they getting a certain decline. Then I think that we're going to tackle this, the most immediate way that we can is simply presenting them with a dedicated error. Please try another card. When we're receiving a decline that is originated in a PSD2 related decline, then the versions that you see here below will already support the please try another card option. It would basically encourage them to try another card. This will usually apply to the clients that they will get in where full contact or contactless are being declined for any reason. That will encourage them to pull out another card and try. If, for example, one card has already reached the quota for 6 consecutive transactions that done without strong customer authentication, then possibly his other card will work. So this is a small workaround, but we believe it will affect the behavior of customers as well. As for tackling the issue with contact transactions head on, I think that's our current approach is something that we should be clear about. First of all, we are monitoring every region that has PSD2 come in a 24/7 solution. We have automatic pop-ups coming out and saying, as we see decline rate increasing here, and or we see a certain anomaly here, and we investigated basically on site. And what is our reaction plan is to basically do one of the twos. First of all, we want to coordinate migration of the operators to what we call a NAG subscription program. NAG subscription program is basically us utilizing the other side of the exemptions that we talked about, is basically using what we know as a TRA or merchant initiated transaction, and processing the transaction, the contact transaction, in a different way, which is again checked and allowed by the acquirers that you use. And Oded will have some more information on that. If you have high contactless rates in your region and you think that the experience with EMV Contact is problematic, you might simply choose to turn it off altogether, and then basically migrate to a contactless only solution. And again, we can discuss, with each and every one of you, what are the implications in this case. Okay, so that's it from my side. I will address some of the questions that I see that you are already sending me while Oded is presenting his part. So, sure, so take it away.
Okay, so hello everybody. Let's share my camera and also my screen for a second. 1 second. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
The right screen?
Yeah, the slide with NAG with NSP.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so hi everyone. Following Erez's explanation about the alternative or the next approach in terms of the PSD2 regulations, I will now present the NAG subscription program transaction flow, so you can know what to expect in terms of the customer experience once the configuration is done. As Erez mentioned before, these messages that you will see will be available only from version 3008 for VPOS and Amit, and for VPOS Touch is 4009 and above. So let's go for the first step. The first step, and it's of course similar to both devices. The consumer insert is chip card, the contact, and then the card will be authorized. At that point, the consumers will see the message you have been registered, and the card will be approved. Once the card will be approved, the product, of course, will be dispensed. And in that point, the consumer will see an additional message that will give him the option to basically opt out from the registration by pressing the cancel button or the end button in the VPOS. And this is the option for him to actually cancel the registration. Something that you need to be aware of once the customer is not canceling the registration. From that point, every transaction that you will do with the same card in every NACS device worldwide will be a regular transaction. It will not require any additional registration, and you will not see the messages, the registration messages again. Okay, so this is important to know. So let's move on for which configuration is actually activates this transaction flow. Okay, so on the operator level, and just before we go deep into the configuration, I think it's worth mentioning that the configuration you're about to see can only be modified by NACS HQ support or payment ops team, and we will be coordinate with you guys when we need it. The only flag that's available for you as a DCS users is the device parameters, which I will show later on this presentation. Another thing that you need to be aware of that there is several billing providers that supports this kind of flow, which is Amir, SafeCharge, and Crederax, and each one of them describe the process a little bit different. So, for example, for Amir, we will use Moto, and also for SafeCharge, and Crederax we will use MIT, and you will see the difference in terms of the configuration. But the common base for all those three that we process the transaction as a remote transaction, and only for contact and chip cards only. Okay. So let's go back for the configuration. So we have two levels of configuration. One's on the operator level. On the operator level, we have the billing gateway tab. So if we are want to configure the MIT, we have a specific radio button that we need to click. Once we click on the MIT button, additional 3 fields will be opened. So we insert the mandatory credentials to receive the MIT transaction flow, and we don't use or change anything on the above credentials. So this have to be both of them configured. As far as for the MIT dynamic descriptor, this is, of course, it's optional, and this is something that you can decide if you want to fill in or not. And this is, of course, will display it in the consumer bank or credit card statement. Okay, so we are staying on the MIT configuration, and let's see what we are going to do on the machine level. In the machine level, we are approaching first to the payment tab. In the payment tab, we have the transaction options section, and we have the do clearing as alternative transaction. What we are doing to configure the MIT flow, we are actually ticking the max strike cards and the contact cards read. So we're going to skip the contactless. The contactless will always be read as a regular EMV transaction and will not be affected with this flow. In the device side, we go into the card reader section, and we will change the VPOS card option to PSD2 plus EMV contactless. and you can see we change the value, the name of the value to PSD2 plus E in the contactless. Now it's Monix, but you now will approach the new value, which is PSD2 plus E in the contactless. The same goes for the motto, which is Emir and Safe Charge. Okay, so in that configuration, we'll click on the motto button. Additional fields will be opened, and the very same we did with the MIT, we will enter and insert the dedicated credentials for the motto configuration, and at the machine level, in that option, we will only tick the contact card read. And here you can see already the new value name PSD2 plus EMV contactless. So this is what you will configure to the device. Of course, the device needs to be sent this parameter and following with a restart. So once this configuration is done, actually you will be, the device is ready to process the transaction as alternative transaction, as alternative processing. And it will affect, of course, only the contact, the chip transactions that will be occurred on this device, specific device. Other than that, of course, we always encouraging paying in the alternative payment. We will start with the mobile, of course, the mobile payment, Apple Pay, Google Pay, the Monix wallet, and of course contactless. We encourage you to encourage the consumers to use contactless by putting a sticker on the machine. Any advertising of any kind of marketing stickers that can direct the consumer to use the contactless will be helping you to increase the acceptance rate in terms of PSD2 declines. And of course, you can configure the VPOS touch. If we're talking about the VPOS touch, you configure the VPOS touch, the idle mode, to include the symbols, the logos of the contactless. Not only when you are approaching the device, also when you intend to pay, you will see this symbol of contactless use. This will encourage the customer, the consumer, to use the contactless card. Erez also mentioned it in his presentation. We also replaced the message when your consumer is experiencing a decline. So we change the message to instead of temporary not approved to please try another card, and assuming that the consumer will use a contactless card, the transaction will be successful. So that's it from my point. Hope you got the information needed about the newcomer regulation of PSD2. I believe that we have some questions. So Judith, you want to go with the question and we will just answer it?
Yeah, sure. I don't actually see the question list, but okay. Yeah.
So let me try this to Eliran. Do you see it?
Eliran will be joining us, but we really don't have time for the questions. If possible, we will address them, Oded, via email. Okay.
Okay. I've already answered a few, and I will continue to do so.
Okay.
Okay, so that's wonderful. Thank you.
Oded, I did refer one to you.
What? Okay, no problem.
I did refer one question to you.
Okay, no problem.
I'm sure the team will revert back with the necessary answers. That was great, everyone. Thank you. We appreciate all of you guys being here. Just a quick update. We'll be having a lot more engaging content coming up. We have webinar sessions in the upcoming months to cover new releases, share knowledge, introduce new features and whatnot. So the next one, I believe, is in early Feb. We're introducing the Nova Market, the retail solution, and everyone will receive an invite soon. I think sometime next week, you will get an invitation. So please make sure that you're connected, stay connected with us, make sure that you reserve your spots. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And I guess we'll see you next time. Till then, stay safe.